Welcome to Adventures in Surgical Weight Loss with Dr. R. I'm Dr. Richard Rasmussen. I'm a bariatric surgeon and excited to bring you another story from a surgical weight loss patient. My goal is to give patients a place where they can share their amazing stories. I get to hear these stories all the time. I hope through this process to get rid of some of the bad information that exists about surgical weight loss. In this episode, we get to hear from Michelle LaRue. Michelle is a full-time mom and a full-time nursing student. I hope you enjoy getting to know her story. All right, today I have the opportunity to sit down with Michelle LaRue. Michelle, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
Doing great, thanks. Well, why don't you tell us your story?
Okay. Well, I've never been a small person. Every time anybody asks you, well, the last time you were at your goal weight, I've never been at my goal weight. And it finally clicked, well, it'll be about 3 years ago when I stepped on the scale and realized that I weighed about 35 pounds more than my husband, who is a foot taller than me. And I was like, no, this is not okay. Something's got to change. This isn't going to work anymore. So I decided, since I started working over at Utah Valley Hospital in the OR and met all of the people there, I was like, maybe this is something that could work. Because I've had family members that have had gastric bypasses before. They've had great success, but they had a lot of complications, and I didn't want to worry about complications. So I did a little bit of research to find out, what all of the options were, and determined to settle on a gastric sleeve, because then I could still have part of my stomach, because my theory was you were born with a stomach, you should really keep your stomach. You're born with it for a reason. So that's why I picked that one, and ultimately it worked because I don't have any problems with GERD or anything like that. So it was a good option. So in the beginning process of all of it, I lost my grandma, and so it was really hard to continue on, but I was like, no, this would make her so happy to know that I could do this and lose all of this weight. So I went for it. I won't lie, it is definitely the hardest surgery I've ever had. The recovery was not easy, to say the least. But I did it, and then the first 2 weeks I questioned my sanity more than anything, because I was like, what did I do? Why did I do this?
Which I will point out is a very common thing for patients to have some point in the process where you say, what did I do?
Yeah. Yep. And then, at the beginning I lost like 20 pounds super quick, and then I stalled out, and I was like, I went through all of this to lose 20 pounds. Like, oh my gosh, this was so not worth it. And then obviously it just kept coming off. So I'm at about 110 pounds now lost. I feel better now than I ever have. And I'm example for my kids. I'm still not at my goal weight, but I keep working at it. But I'm also in nursing school full time and working full time and have 3 little ones. So I keep telling myself I need to be patient with myself, because I have a lot of stressors going on in my life right now. But I have been able to maintain my weight loss. So that's been good. And it'll be 3 years in December. So I've been able to at least maintain it. So I don't regret doing it for a minute. My mom has now done it, and she's had a lot of success because of my success stories. My brother-in-law reached out to me yesterday, and he's thinking about doing it too. So it is definitely a tool. It is not just an easy thing. And I hate it when people say you took the easy way out, because it is far from the easy thing. It is a very challenging thing. You have to change your entire mindset. I do still eat the things that I enjoy eating, just in much smaller increments than I used to eat them before, but there's no part of me that regrets it. So, and I haven't had,
awesome.
Honestly, I don't think that I've had any complications whatsoever. So it's been great.
That's great. What, as you went through the process, you had the stall, and then what kind of got you going again? What helped you through that?
I guess sheer determination. I just kept trying and was like, nope, I've got to do more. I have to do this. And then it was weird. It stalled out for probably 2 or 3 weeks, and then it just started coming off pretty quickly. So it was really fun being able to go into the stores and going from having to go from like a specialized plus size store to being able to go into a regular store and get regular size clothing. So it's been really fun to be able to do that. Or like when we had scrubs at work, I was in the biggest size and now I'm in like the smallest size. So it's just been really fun to see, to have the difference. However, I will say body dysmorphia is a very real thing, and it is a really hard thing to not look at myself in a swimsuit or whatever and still see the fat person that I was. In my head, I know I'm not fat anymore, but sometimes I still feel that way. So it's something that I definitely have to work on. So, but yes, like you, I mean, I'm a mom, so I still have the mom body.
What things have worked well for you to help with the body dysmorphia?
Um, I honestly, I don't know, because it's still a daily battle that I have. Just try to be comfortable in my own skin, and I guess trying to be an example to my girls that you don't have to have the perfect body to be okay, to be happy. You just be happy with what you've got. So I try really hard to, because I don't want my girls to be affected, be like, I have to have the perfect body to be happy. Like if I have any wrinkles, any little like rolls or anything, and I don't want them to have to see that. And so I try really hard to not feel that way. But when they're not there, it's still a challenge that I work on. But it's a work in progress.
Yeah. How old are your girls?
4 and 7.
Awesome. Awesome. Do you keep old photos around to remind you of what it was?
Yep.
Does that
Not to
help at
remind
all?
myself, mostly it's just family pictures that I don't want to get rid of, but I'm always like, oh my gosh, that is just awful.
What kind of things had you done before surgery to try to lose weight?
So I did have quite a bit of success just by doing some HIIT exercises and just watching what I ate, and it worked pretty well. I was able to lose 50 pounds with that, but I wasn't able to maintain it. And then I got pregnant with my third one, my last, my youngest daughter, and so and then it snowballed from there and just got worse. And in order just to do the exercises, I was so like overweight. It was just really hard to be able to do them, to be able to do anything. So it was disheartening, and I just felt like it was a constant battle and it never was successful. And I mean, ultimately, obviously, it would have been worth it all in the end, but it took me, I think, a year and a half to drop the 40 to 50 pounds that I had lost. I think it was 50, it was somewhere between 40 and 50, and I was super happy with that, but it it didn't stay, unfortunately. So now that I've been able to maintain this, I mean, I say maintain it, I've gone up about 5 pounds or so. I go within that range between 5 pounds up and down. But other than that, I've been able to maintain it. And so it's been really nice to just be able to keep it off.
Awesome. And we discussed this in the office. I can't remember if you and I have discussed it specifically, but that is pretty normal to, as you kind of get to your kind of maintenance weight, for it to have that little 5 pound or so fluctuation.
Yeah.
That's just kind of a normal, day-to-day thing. You mentioned that you researched it a lot. What sources did you use to understand weight loss surgery and to make the decision that this is what you wanted to do?
So I did go to places like WebMD type thing, but I also asked a lot of my family members that had had the surgery done. Well, they all had bypasses. None of them had had the sleeve. And so that was kind of my concern going in, because there were a lot of people that were like, well, you're just going to get it out back because you still have your stomach and everything else. And so it was a chance that I just took. But I would say mostly probably by word of mouth, just because the internet's great, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. So that was, yeah.
Great, great. What you mentioned about 2 weeks in, you hit the stall. Kind of what did I do?
Mm-hmm.
Did you mentioned just you kind of waited and it came off. Did you make any changes? Was there anything you felt like, oh, I did, or was it just, oh, I needed to give it a little more time?
No, I kind of just think I needed to give it more time, because I didn't really change a whole lot, because at that point, I mean, I was walking on like my treadmill and stuff, but still was in the recovery. So I couldn't really get a whole lot into like deep exercises. And I was already hardly eating anything, so it's not like I could lower what I was eating because, yeah, I couldn't eat anything anyway.
Yeah.
It was just like a time thing. And I just think I needed to be more patient.
And I wanted to bring that up too because, one of the things people think about is, oh, I get the surgery and the weight just comes off. And while that is true, if you map that out day to day and even week to week, there's a lot of plateaus or stalls, and sometimes weight will even go up a little bit in the journey and then
Mhm.
come back down. And so that's pretty common. And so if people understand that ahead of time, that's
Yeah.
good. The other thing, and I'm curious to know if you notice this, when you hit those periods where weight doesn't seem to be changing, a lot of times people will know that actually inches are changing. Clothes fit differently, and they're actually losing inches even though the pounds aren't coming
Yes.
off.
So I did do that as well. I started taking my measurements in addition to just the scale, and it definitely helped, or even just the clothes. So when my mom did hers, she went through the same thing. She was always frustrated, and I was always like, you need to take your non-scale victories because they're even more important than your scale victories. And she looked at me like I was crazy because she didn't know what that meant. But I was like, you fit into smaller clothes, so you just have to be patient. So it was interesting being on the flip side of the equation of being like, no, I know what you're saying, but just give it more time.
Yeah, that's awesome. You'd had the experience. You could practically help somebody else out
Yes.
that was going through it. That's awesome. You mentioned non-scale victories. You had mentioned previously clothes and fitting and where you could shop. What other non-scale victories have you noticed?
Um, I don't know how I feel, I guess. I mean, everyone knows I was like, do you feel amazing? And I do, but I didn't feel horrible to begin with because I was still younger, so I didn't get into like the older phases of having all of these things. But I can definitely notice now more just how I feel and have been able to like run around with my kids more or be able to play sports more and just do those things or just being able to be on my treadmill and going for a longer period of time. Also, not having to use my inhaler anymore for because I had exercise induced asthma. I don't have to use that anymore. I still do use my CPAP. Mostly, I think it's a mental thing. I can't get past the not using it, but my pressures are down significantly. And so it's just those things I already know they make a big, huge a difference.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And my ring
Um,
sizes, they've come down like 3 ring sizes. Like you wouldn't think that
oh
would be a
wow.
big deal, but I went from like a size 9 ring to a size 6. So it's just those things that you just take for granted and you're like, "Oh, look, this is what it's like to be a normal size person."
So did you resize your rings?
Oh, yes, multiple times.
Yeah, very interesting. Um, Having been through this, what if you're counseling somebody who's thinking about it? What would be your advice?
Just do it. If you're thinking about it and you're committed, just do it. It is worth it in the end. You will question your sanity, but there's no part of me, like I said, that wouldn't do it all over again just to have be where I'm at.
Oh, that's great. Um, so you mentioned you're 3 years out, keeping your weight off, and you mentioned before also it's a tool. I think that's a very important point. What in your day to day, what are the things? What are like your I mean, these are my have tos. These are the things that are important, and I know this is what's helping me, maintain the weight loss.
Um, Watching the amount of food that I eat, because I obviously you can only eat so much. I mean, I can still only eat so much, but just trying to watch the amount that I eat. I do try to exercise every day. School is really intense, so unfortunately, I don't get to do it as much as I would like to. However, I'm in my last semester, so things will calm down, so I'll be able to do that more. So I definitely those and trying to make sure that I drink enough. I have cut out my caffeine. I don't have caffeine hardly at all anymore, very rarely. Um, so that's definitely a must. I drink a lot more water now than I used to drink. So
Awesome,
I would say
awesome.
that, yeah,
So
those.
so volume of food, the types of food. It sounds like
Mhm.
maintaining the exercise,
Yeah.
all good
Yeah, and
good
I'm
points.
definitely
That's
try to
great.
make sure that when I what I do eat has more protein based versus carb based. So I do love my carbs, but I'm very particular on when I have them now.
And that's an excellent point. I want to point out two different things. One, sometimes people have a fallacy of, oh, I'll get the surgery and I can eat whatever I want. And that's not true, because if you eat whatever you want all the time, that weight will come back on.
Yeah.
But it's also not true that you can never eat those things again. And it's just, you mentioned, I'm very particular about what it is and when I do it. You have to make those choices and, make sure it's really worth those calories or that effect that it's going to have on my insulin and on my pancreas. I need to really make sure that that's worth it. And maintenance really is that. I tell patients, 80 to 90% of the time you're eating your core, your protein, your veggies, your good healthy foods, and then you have some treats or other things slip in that smaller percentage of the time, which makes life doable.
Yeah.
That's great. What other advice or what if you were to give your number one staying healthy tip, what would that be?
Stay active. That I think because even obviously a good exercise regimen does not outweigh a bad diet, but I feel like if you're more active, you have a tendency of trying to eat more healthy in general, just because you're being more active. And if you get complacent, and if you just become a couch potato, then it's easier to eat bad food all the time. So if you just try to stay active, even if it's not a full-on hardcore exercise every single day, just go for a walk around the block or whatever, just staying active in general, I think helps to build that foundation of just living healthier.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip. And I think, as you pointed out, doing that, being active, individuals make better choices with the eating. Also, as you maintain lean muscle mass, that improves your body's insulin response. So when you eat, your body has a better response, a better insulin response if you have more lean muscle mass. Because as you pointed out, it's not you can easily overeat what you can exercise. I mean, if you ever do the math and look at, a donut, and then how much walking or running it would take to burn that donut, and you did that multiple times a day, that's more exercise than people do or can do.
Yeah.
And so it's really not about exercising off the calories. It's about the healthy attitude that it creates for you, so you're making those better choices, and then having that lean muscle, which helps your body's insulin response. Great advice. Anything else you want to tell us about your story, about your journey?
I don't think so. Like I said, I don't regret it. And a coworker, her husband got it. And I think a lot of that was because she would tell him my stories as well. So it's nice to be a role model, so to speak, of people, of changes that you can make. It is possible to make the changes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And good job on being that role model. My last question, which is probably a silly question because I can hear it in what you've shared with me already, but would you do it over again?
1,000% yes.
Awesome. Well, congrats on 110 pounds lost and maintained. Congrats on almost being done with nursing school, and congrats on all those other non-scale victories you shared with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending your time with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks again to Michelle for sharing her story with us. Congratulations to her on keeping 110 pounds off over the last 3 years. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. It will help us reach more people with these amazing stories. I also have a YouTube channel where you can see this video, as well as several other videos about surgical weight loss, general surgery, and robotic surgery. Join us next time for another amazing story.